What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 227 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we have another I'm a Hardscaper Mashup episode, and this is where we take a single question from our I'm a Hardscaper series throughout the year. And those are series where we sit down one-on-one with a business owner and do a deep dive into their hardscaping business. So we take one of the questions that we ask and we give everybody's answer from this year on this mashup episode. And this mashup episode features the question of what is a horror story you've experienced in your business? And the reason why I asked this question, and I've always asked this question since I started the podcast, is to help those just starting out or already in business, just to help them understand what can happen in business, the things that are likely to happen, and how you can prevent those in your business by putting some safeguards in place, or to at least mentally prepare yourself for when these things do inevitably happen in your business. But before we get into that, we want to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for some money off on their services there, as well as the How to Hardscape headquarters. If you're looking for a software to sink your teeth into over the winter to get set up, How to Hardscape headquarters could be for you. This software is going to help you streamline processes in your business, from budgeting, estimating job costing, CRM, time tracking, time sheets, and so much more. Basically, what we're doing is we are starting with the foundational aspects that you will need for a software and building on top of those. And as we roll out more and more features, our pricing will increase for new users coming on, but not for existing users. So you lock in your pricing as soon as you sign up. In addition to the software, you've got access to our training courses, our installation training videos, which are 3 hours long for the interlocking concrete pavement, as well as the segmental retaining walls, and with a test at the end. And this is something that you can use not only for yourself if you're just getting into hardscaping, but also for your employees to train and onboard them. And we're going to be rolling out more courses in our course database there that you can use for training and onboarding purposes as well. But just shoot me a message at How to Hardscape on Instagram, or contact at howtohardscape.com if you're looking to email me for more information on that, or directly to members.howtohardscape.com. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
Hey, my name is Joel Johnson with Hatton Landscape, and I am a hardscaper. Two that pop into mind, but the first one I'll share, I think, again, it goes back to the draw. That was really when we implemented it. It was the horror story that brought this on. We were doing a big retaining wall for a customer, and big retaining wall and patio project. And we were doing it 50% down and 50% at the end. So, we had like around $20,000 that this guy had. And long story short, he was just kept like adding things in, like, well, this, like wanted us to re-put in brick edging. After we put the brick edging in, like, I had the customer meet us to really specify where he wanted it. We put it in, and then he literally came back from lunch and refused to give me the money until we moved it again. So it was just like kind of one of those things where you could feel the guy dragging you down the road a little bit. And that was, kind of the start of like, man, we've got to, that leaves a lot of power in your customer's hands. So looking back on it after you do the project, you're like, man, I knew better than to work with this person for X, Y, and Z. But yeah, sometimes that's easier to see after the fact. But yeah, that was, for us, that was painful, because it was somehow managed to be dragged on for weeks, because he would say, well, I'm not home, and then it just became really a headache. Thankfully, we were paid for that. It was never got to that point. I know a lot of people have worse horror stories than that. But yeah, that was kind of that learning lesson for me of, man, I need to, collect more money along the way. Cause this is it was nerve wracking as a small business owner. You've got payroll coming up, the headaches of things, and this customer was just so reluctant to pay, and just kept kind of making silly changes. That was really what started the process of the draw payments, which have been great for us. So we've never had like any nightmares where someone just straight up hasn't paid an amount. But yeah, that was a good enough lesson for me of like, man, I need to collect some money along the way for sure.
Definitely, yeah, a definitely good learning lesson, especially, and I've learned that. I'm sure many people have that draw method. Having leaving as little to that end is the best for us as possible as business owners, and for that cash flow throughout the project, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even, just looking at being objective as far as our method, even 25% at the end, depending the project size can be a large amount. So I would definitely recommend, you don't want the customer having to come out every day and give you a check, obviously. But I think it's important that, yeah, as minimal amount you can leave to the end as makes sense, I think is super crucial.
Definitely.
Uh,
I am Alex Altschuler, the owner of Seal It Group. We specialize in sealing and restoration and landscape construction. I am a hardscaper. Yeah, definitely. There's probably a lot of horror stories. But one that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, if you will, is kind of at the very beginning of when I started out. At the time, I I bought the vehicle that I can afford. So it was a 2001 GMC Safari. I think I paid $1,500 for the vehicle. So I mean, what can you get for 1,500? Obviously, complete, rusted out, kind of box on wheels, we'll call it. Where I just kind of slapped the driveway sealing unit in the back, ripped the seats out, put everything I had to put into it in, and I was towing a little trailer 4x8 with all our lawnmowers on it. And I remember getting on the highway, and obviously, no CVR, no registrations, no yellow stickers. You didn't know about any of that yet. This is humble beginnings, we'll call it. So, um, you're I'm driving down the highway, and I start to notice like a real good wobble on the front end there. And I'm like, well, something's definitely wrong, right? So I'm like, oh, it's okay. It's an old truck. It's got 300,000. It's normal, right? So I keep driving and driving and driving, and I'm thinking it's gonna get better. I'm thinking it's gonna get better. Turns out it's getting worse. It's getting worse. But I didn't have time to pull over. I think at the time I had to go meet somebody to pick up a machine or something I was looking to buy, and there was a meeting I had to get done. So, um, long story short, I end up getting a flat tire, and so it ended up being a tire that was going bad or whatever. I ended up getting this flat tire, and I can't remember if I was on the highway or off the road. I think I just ended up making it to a client's house, and I have this flat tire, a trailer on there, a driveway sealing unit in the back, and I'm like, well, I have to get this fixed. I have a bunch of other calls today I got to do. So the first thing you do, you look under the car for your spare tire. So I remember, taking the spare tire off, and it was probably the most dinkiest, spare tire you'd ever see in your life. It was, the donut spare tire. For the Safari, it's obviously larger, but it's still skinny, almost like a bicycle tire, and it's completely rusted out. You could see the tread on it is worn out. It needs to, it shouldn't even be on that truck. Um, and I end up calling CAA, and because I didn't have a jack to do it or any tools, and I basically call them in, and I let the guy know who comes to change the tire, like, this is the tire. And he looks at me, he says, "Are you crazy? You're not putting this tire on." I go, I basically was begging him at the time. He said, "No, I'm not putting it on. Like, there's no way." I'm like, "Well, look, I don't have any other option. Like, I have to keep going, right? Like, I'm literally just going maybe 5 kilometers away to a Mr. Lube just to get a new tire, and then be on my way." And he gave in eventually, because he understood. He felt my pain. He understood that I'm trying to keep going. And so, but yeah, it was like just overwhelming, this whole process. So he ended up putting it on, and I ended up going to the nearest tire shop, getting the new tire put on, and on my way. But yeah, it was just an overwhelming experience. Just obviously you're driving on the road, your tires wobbling, you don't know if that thing's gonna fall off. You're just, all these thoughts are going through your head. Am I gonna make it? Is this thing gonna just give up on me? Am I gonna be able to keep running my business with this crappy truck? And yeah, and you get these moments where there's just just really kind of, how do you call it,
Down
do or
times.
die. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, even do or die kind of
that's
life or
better.
death situations. Yeah, right. Like where you're just like you're running on fumes, and there's you're improvising. You're it's yeah. So that was, it was scary stuff. Just having to go through all that, and but eventually I got a truck, and I got a used truck, and you know, and more horror stories came after that. But those were maybe a little bit better than that one, because you realize that planning ahead is key. Having everything set up is key. Um, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. So yeah, like scary experience, but like I said, you got to start somewhere, and you got to do what you got to do. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's a great horror story to share, and like I can empathize with that. I've had my share of flat tires when I was just starting out too, and also dealing with CAA, and that's never a fun time.
I remember just constantly also driving this setup. Just praying that CV or MTO doesn't pull me over. I remember you know seeing an MTO truck, and as soon as they see this van and this trailer, I remember they get right behind me, and I'm like looking in my mirror. Oh, they're gonna pull me over. They're gonna pull me over. And at the time you're probably not registered or whatever, and you're just, it looks like you're kind of just a independent contractor, maybe even like a homeowner.
Right.
So, the guy probably followed me for quite a bit, but then he obviously realized that there's no sense pulling me over because, I was within probably weight ranges. It's just that, he probably wouldn't be able to get anything really, right?
Yeah.
But it's like it makes you kind of cringe. It's like, is he gonna pull me over? Is what's gonna happen, kind of thing. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Hey, my name is Alex Castelline. I am the owner-operator of Casty Landscape Group. We specialize in luxury living in the outdoors, and I am a father and owner of a lasagna company as well. And I am at first a hardscaper. I don't think we have that much time. Yeah, I don't think if you're thinking about going into business for yourself, just don't do it. It's awful sometimes. No, I mean, we've especially at a young age, we were taken advantage of all the time with when it came to payments. People just owed us a couple $1,000s, which back then was a lot of money, and it still is a lot of money, but back then it hurt a lot more. We've had lots of people not pay us, and we learned again the hard way to have nice contracts in place with payment schedules like you're talking about, and proper scopes of work that outline what you're doing. And the other big one was getting into doing 3D designs. If the customer knows what you're going to be building for them, they have a much easier time or a harder time, going back afterwards and saying, well, it's not what I expected. I'm not paying you. But I would say the biggest horror story when you start out is trying to just chase people for money. That's the hardest one. And we sometimes still deal with this day. But I would say my biggest horror story in my landscape career would have been my old landlord. We rented a shop off Rymel Road right across from Oak Ridge. And his name is Dominic. And he rented us, I think, 8 parking spaces. And the guy was a psycho. He actually owns a digital billboard on the side of the highway on the QEW going Niagara bound. And he said, well, Alex, if you plow my lot this winter, I'll give you my digital billboard ad. And then so we did that, and we put an ad actually for Pretto's of our lasagnas on there. And like, we're now in these stores and blah, 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 that were in Hamilton. So we started doing that, and then he was complaining about the lot clearing, and then he wasn't happy. So he sent me an invoice for the digital billboard that, again, I never signed anything. He took my signature that was off my lease and forged it on this document. And that was just the start. Wow. He then asked for me to quote on a project at the building that he built way back in the day that Wilson Blanchard, I guess, manages. And so he sits on the board, so he has a conflict of interest, so he couldn't do any work on the property. So he had me given a quote to do the work, not telling me he had a conflict of interest. And he said, Alex, put in the quote, I'll give you $500. So I said, okay, it sounds sketchy. He's like, no, there's nothing sketchy about it. It's just, they want a second opinion, so just give them a quote. And I said, okay, whatever. So not thinking anything of it, we hand in the quote, we get awarded the contract. Dominic goes, okay, well, I'm actually going to do the work, and I'm going to give you your $500, but you now have to invoice them and then give me the money. I was like, Dominic, I never agreed to this. Like, I'm not, this is shady shit. I don't want to do this. And so that happened. Wilson Blanchard had a problem because they found out Dominic was doing the work. They were slow paying. I finally got a check from Wilson Blanchard. It took like 3 months, and then the bank held it. So Dominic, who was leaving to go to Florida, said, Alex, I need my money right now. And I said, Dominic, the check hasn't cleared. I can't give you any money. So Dominic used our PAD form, automatic withdrawal form, which if you ever give, or if you ever rent somewhere from anyone, do not give them a PAD form, give them post-dated checks. He was able to use our PAD form, and he debited my account the $22,000 that he was owed through Wilson Blanchard, which is not only illegal, it's wire fraud, and it should have been he should have been like arrested for it, basically. TD Bank ended up returning the funds. I had a big issue with Dominic because of this, and I basically said, "You're going to do something like as restitution for this." So he gave me a couple months worth of rent for free, but I didn't want to make it look like I wasn't paying my rent or not giving him checks, because it would give him something to like grounds to get me out of his yard. So we post-dated checks and found a creative way to get the money back out of it. And then the very next day, Dominic, doesn't like his deal. He says, "Never mind, I want my money. You owe me my money." And he starts sending me this paperwork that I signed a contract again for a digital billboard for the cost of that job, 20-something thousand. But he gave me a couple months rent less. So now he's showing there's a balance due on this invoice for a digital billboard for 20-something $1,000. He goes, I woke up one night to banging on my door at 9:00, and my truck was on fire. This was after our dispute that day. And he basically he sent someone to my house. There was someone underneath my truck basically with a torch trying to light the gas tank on fire. I couldn't prove it was him. Very good chance it was him. The day after that, after I, said, "Hey, like, what the fuck is going on? Why are you doing this? Why do you have such an issue? You agreed to this deal." Well, I go to the shop, and I'm missing a trailer. I'm missing a Bobcat. I'm missing my Western wideout. Basically like $100,000+ worth of equipment is missing. And, it's in the winter time. You can see the tracks driving in and out of the door, no forced entry. So it must've been someone with a key. Anyway, I called Dominic. I said, "What did you do with my equipment?" He goes, "Oh shit, Alex, I had it moved in case you weren't going to pay me the check from the job. I forgot to call off the guy." I said, "Are you shitting me? Like, so you basically stole from me and you're admitting to it right now." So we had to get the police involved the second time, because the first time was after the wire fraud. We got the police involved, and he was trying to show them the documents that I hadn't paid my rent, and I owed him money for digital billboards and rent and all this stuff. And now he was saying that he was allowed to detain my things under the Landlord Seizures Act for commercial properties. If you don't pay your rent in 3 months, they can actually seize your assets. So that's what he was trying to pull. He was basically trying to show that I didn't pay my rent, and he was trying to seize my equipment to basically pay himself back. He was starting to show the police all these papers, and I said, "If you look at my lease signature will match these documents, because all those documents are forged. I've never signed any agreement for a digital billboard." The cop looks at him. He said, "Show me the lease right now, and if that signature matches, I'm arresting you for extortion." And Dominic shoved the papers back in his bag, and we basically had to move our stuff out of his yard the next day. The police had to be there the whole day to watch us move, because he kept trying to come in and block us from basically taking our stuff. Anyway, it was a nightmare. And then 3 years later, he sued me. So I just finished in court with him, had to pay him $6,500 for some reason, because he had so much fake evidence on all this stuff that the courts were so confused, and I had no proof of any of the conversations and deals I made with him, because I never made him sign anything. So I had to pay him $6,500 3 years later. So that's my horror story.
Wow. I haven't heard anything like that before.
It was honestly, it was like something out of a movie, like having your equipment stolen, and then barred entry from our yard because he changed the locks. He put a semi truck in front of all of our equipment and trucks. If we got called out for snow, we would have lost our contracts, because we wouldn't have been able to service anybody. We had to hire a heavy tow truck to move the trailer out of the way. Not to mention the cops sat there for 16 hours while we moved our entire shop. I had stone stored there, equipment stored there. We did like 3 flatbeds full of material to get to our new shop. And it probably cost like $4,000 just to move the shop, with between labor and all the trucking fees, the heavy tow truck. And I tried to use that to counter sue him, and the lawyer says, "Don't bother, you're not going to win." So
Wow.
after all this, he got away with murder essentially and got his money. So
Wow. I just want to take a break from today's episode to talk about our sponsor, Cycle CPA. You may have a CRM or project management software in place, but what data are you using to ensure your estimating is accurate? Having a proper accounting setup and accurate bookkeeping done is key to understanding overhead expenses and other costs that must be recouped in your estimates. Cycle CPA is a remote bookkeeping and CFO firm that helps to connect the dots from the financial reports to the hardscape and landscape data needed in order to reach high profits. They provide landscape and hardscape industry benchmarking, job costing, financials by service line, advisory meetings, and much more. Cycle CPA's team of accountants are specialized within the hardscape and landscape industry, and you can visit them at cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode.
My name is Giovanni, better known as Johnny Giovanni. I'm the designer and owner of Stoneworthy, and I'm a hardscaper. Ooh, let me think about that one for a second.
Yeah, for sure.
Unfortunately, I'm trying to think, but there really hasn't been one, I would say, which I'm completely grateful for. I would say the only horror story that I've had, and it's not much of a horror story because it wasn't our fault, is we were putting on like this big piece of limestone, like this slab for this kitchen. And when we received it, once the loader came and got off the truck and, pulled the side of the bed down, it was cracked. And the homeowner wasn't happy. I wouldn't be happy either because she had an event that weekend. But I mein, like I said, it was nobody's fault, and I'd say, fortunately for me, that's been my biggest horror story, just because, I really tried to push my coworkers so we could finish. But other than that, I've been blessed. I haven't had like any major horror stories. I have a lot of colleagues in the industry, and, unfortunately for them, they told me a few of the other stories they've dealt with. But, like I said, I've truly been blessed not to be in a situation like that. But yeah, I'd say probably that's the only horror story that comes to mind.
So then how do you manage that with a client that would evidently and justifiably be kind of upset when they had that, event planned and something like that shows up that they weren't expecting? How do you manage their I guess emotions in that, in finding that out at first? And what do you say to them to try to make them feel, a little bit better about that situation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I don't, it wasn't their fault. It wasn't our fault. Like I said, it could have happened during transportation. It could have happened at the quarry. I mean, wherever it happened, it happened. So the homeowners were upset, but I was just like, well, you're gonna have a countertop one way or another. So I ended up, since like I said, our niche is just stonework, so we have like granite slabs and all that at our location. So what we did is we actually went back to our facility. I grabbed them like a temporary countertop for that weekend. It wasn't perfect by any means, because I mean it wasn't for that application, but we definitely grabbed a few slabs and we made it work. She had them the couple had them temporarily. They were still able to use the space and everything, so it didn't take them out of commission. At that point, you just have to come up with a solution. You just have to feel like you have to see like, hey, this is a problem. What can I do just to kind of save the day? Even though there was something bad happen, it's like, all right, well, now I have to figure it out. So I definitely try to be a problem solver.
Hi, I'm Scott Elam. I am the owner operator of Infinity Lawn and Landscaping, and we specialize in outdoor living spaces and landscape design. I am a hardscaper. I tried to think of one. I don't have any big horror stories. I've been pretty lucky, but I'll tell you this: the biggest thing is having a contract in place. And this might be back to when I started the original, that one big project I remember, and I got lucky again. My my best friend, and I was actually his best man at his wedding, is a contract lawyer. And we were sitting at his dad's house, and I told him about this project. And this is, 2010. I was 22 years old or something, 23. I should do the math actually. But anyways, it was back then. And he heard about it and he goes, "Do you have a contract?" And I go, "No, I just have an itemized list on, QuickBooks." And he goes, "Okay." It was a Sunday. He went into his office at his house, and we were doing something with his car. We were putting a supercharger in his car. I don't know what it was on my buddy's car. And before I left, his dad walked out and he handed me a flash drive, and he goes, "Attach this to every single contract you sign from now." And he goes, "You're not small cutting grass anymore. This is big time." And ever since then, I have attached that to every single contract. And there's been two times I know of it saved me. Where the guy, it was like, "I'm not paying you." And I went, "Well, here's the contract you signed, and you can either pay me or we're going to court and you're paying attorney fees on top of it, because I've done everything that I said I would in this contract." That's a big thing. When you do something, do exactly what you're going to say, do what your contract says. And that's why I like to specify things out too, is the detail. There's no real gray area. When you write your contracts and you have an itemized list and you go, "I'm using this grill, or I'm using, this brick, that's the color you signed on." And the customer, "I hate this color." That's fine, but that's the color you signed. So I can change it for you. I will do whatever it takes to make you happy, but there's an extra cost on this. If I got to pull all this brick up and put it back down, your contract saves you so much. And I have many friends in the industry that have had that happen to them, and they've lost big time. So they've had big hits. They've had what do you want to call it? A very expensive learning lesson. And I mean, that not seeing that now, when it was happening, I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll attach it, whatever." But I remember even two years ago, when my salesperson came up to me and they said, "Hey, this guy's an attorney and he doesn't like this line of the contract." And I read it and I'm like, he wants me to remove this section of the contract which says, "If you don't pay me, I cannot take you to court and you have to pay my attorney fees and cover me." And I'm like, we're not doing work for this guy. And it was that quick. And so just having the contracts in place, having itemized lists of what you're doing and doing what you're saying, will save you a lot of those horror stories.
My name's Jake. I'm the owner operator of JFS Property Care, and I am a hardscaper. Yeah, I've got a few of them. As I'm sure everybody does. This one is actually non-hardscape related. We also do fencing. So I was doing a fence install for a customer, did the whole entire job, and he has I'm sure there's other people familiar with fencing, but when you're doing a fence job, obviously the contour of the land you can only do so much with, and he didn't want any gaps at the bottom. So but he also didn't want the fence to dip down. So we went straight into his house at the same plane as the rest of the fence to keep a nice straight top on it. But the yard dipped way down, so he wanted to fix that. So I'm like, "Okay, no problem. We can bring in some boards and we'll put it up against the fence and we'll backfill it." Because he didn't want to spend a lot of money. He's like, "Oh, no, those boards cost way too much money." So, I wanted to do it that way because that's really the only way to keep it somewhat in without actually building some sort of wall system. And he wouldn't pay me until that was done. So, and I didn't take any money up front. This is a couple of years ago. So we ended up buying cinder blocks and just placing cinder blocks on the fence underneath and just backfilling. And it was like 1.5 feet tall. So these cinder blocks are like blowing out on the backside. And I had no ambition of doing this whatsoever, but I wanted to get paid. I mean, it was, I think, a $10,000 job at the time. So I ended up doing exactly what he wanted to for basically cost, because all I wanted to do was get paid. This is like 3 days later, and I'm just like, he wouldn't give me any money. So finally, after all that was said and done, I got paid. And then 2 weeks later, he calls me and he says he's going to sue me. And I said, why are you going to sue me? And he said, "Well, I told you at the beginning I didn't want any gaps in the yard because I didn't want animals to get in my yard." I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, there was squirrels and chipmunks all over my lawn. And I'm like,
don't you think that they're coming from the trees that are overhanging your yard? He's like, no, 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 no. They're coming from underneath the fence. I'm going to sue you for that. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. You go ahead and sue me. Let me know how that goes. Because I was like, at this point, I already got paid. I'm like, what are you going to do, dude? Like, oh my God. I like was beyond words that he was going to sue me because there was animals in his yard.
Wow.
So that was a one good one. Then real quick, I had a lady I put a patio in for last year, and she wanted a tumbled and weathered paver. So we installed the whole entire patio is like 700 square feet. And after the fact, everything was polished, everything was done. She came back to me. She's like, there's a few of those pavers that are chipped. I'm like, yeah, I know it's a tumbled and weathered paver. She's like, no, no, no. There's difference between tumbled and chipped. And I'm like, there's really not a difference, but okay. So I ended up like switching out, I think 7 or 8 pavers. And then she said that we cracked her table and I put my hammer on it and we ended up paying for half of a table, even though we didn't do it, to get paid for the rest of that job too. I mean, we had, most of the money already, but to get paid for the remainder of it. So she was all irritated that we had a chipped paver apparently on the edge was too chipped for her. Even though she got weathered and tumbled pavers.
Wow. Those are rough. Those are rough stories to go off of, especially when you're just starting out there. That's a tough go for sure. But it seems like you handled it well. Just kind of bite your tongue and work your way through it to try to get paid for those projects, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, kind of when your back's up against the wall and, you've got money out on the job, you can't really get into an argument with everybody. Sometimes like paying for that table, it was, I think, $200 to pay for that table, but we were waiting on $8,000 to come in. So, it's not worth it to get into it with them. Your better bet is to just kind of mediate the situation and do what you can to make them happy. And, that's not going to kill you guys and, in the long run either. Cause worst comes to worst, you get into a fight with this person, you go to court, they tell their neighbor tells their neighbor, and then the whole entire town knows that I got into a fight with this customer over something, which is so silly. Yeah. Bad news travels a lot faster than good news. So
right.
Definitely don't make a situation out of it. Obviously everything's different, but sometimes it's better off to just bite your tongue, eat the pride and just get it over.
Yeah. Any red flags that showed up that when you look back at it, you can kind of identify those things that were kind of similar between those two clients that to look for in the future when dealing with a client with a consultation, especially?
Nothing that's like right off the rip that I would notice like, oh, hey, this person's going to be just like them. Obviously you get red flags, from people being like real sticklers. I mean, I had a guy and I'm actually doing the project for him. I know he's really stickler, but we were laying out the patio last winter and he didn't want me to paint on his grass. So I was like, so I know he's like really particular about everything around the house. So I just kind of worked that into the quote, honestly, to be, spend more time throughout the day to, make sure we're cleaned up and everything's, nice and tidy for him and he has nothing to complain about. But no real red flags, just honestly, just make sure that everything's in line and you lay everything out in your proposals and just make sure that everything's written out to make sure you save yourself. And, obviously there's going to be things that aren't going to be in there and you're going to have to, learn that down the line. But, just make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. And that's really, really the big thing. You want to have that written proposal just so you have some kind of proof to work against.
I'm Mark Arsenault. I'm the owner of Green Monster Landscapes in Dover, New Hampshire, specializing in hardscape and stonework, and I am a hardscaper. I don't know that I have a real horror story. Maybe my biggest horror story is working with my ex-wife in the business for 4 seasons between separation and final divorce. So that was a rough 4 years of business.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was tough, but we're past that, so things are better now. But horror stories, I remember having 2 really difficult customers the same year, back to back. And I don't know why. They were like sweethearts to start, and then they just turned evil, for no apparent reason. So weird. I don't know. People are weird sometimes, but I don't know. But I don't major horror stories. We had a guy drive a skid steer into a septic tank that he knew was there.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. And then so the guy that was running the job he had a CDL. We had a 12-ton excavator at the time. So we went back to the shop, grabbed the 12-ton excavator and pulled it out of the septic tank.
Wow.
So it was kind of like, like one tire was in, it was like
Okay.
like maybe a 35-degree angle in the tank. What else? Horror stories.
Well, going back to that client there that you mentioned kind of changed throughout the project, and you couldn't really tell what kind of happened there. How do you manage the remainder of the project there where something like that might happen? How do you get past those things? Or is it just a matter of head down, let's get this job done and let's get out of here?
I think at that point in my career, it was head down and like, let's get this done and get out of here. I would probably handle it differently today. Well, I think today I would see the red flags earlier through experience and through, well, I don't want to call myself mature because that'd be a stretch, but through maturity and experience, I think, you're better at picking up some of those cues earlier on, and not just like, and certainly like, I'm not like I used to be where it's like, oh, we got to sell this job. We got to sell this job. We got to sell this job. Whereas, I'm a lot choosier now. And I probably today I would have smelled that out earlier in the process. And now I would probably just have to like, all right, call a timeout and just have a discussion. Like, I'm not sure what's going on, or if you're not happy, or if we need to do something different to change the way this is going, but it certainly doesn't seem like it's going in the right direction. How can we fix it? But I'm just more hopeful that I don't have those sorts of experiences anymore. Yeah. Because I really love what I do. I enjoy this a lot. I enjoy the interaction with my customers. And feeling them out beforehand is part of that, and knowing if you're going to be a good fit together, personality wise.
My name is Stephen Lisk. My company is Lisk Landscape Innovations. We specialize in stormwater management, and I am a hardscaper. I don't think any horror stories. I think there's little things to learn, though, right? I mean, you make mistakes. I think your contract's so important, right? You need to get an attorney to draft your contract and be very specific. But I think if you don't have a clear-cut contract, you're going to run into a lot of problems, whether that's change orders or just misunderstandings about scope of work. You want to avoid that, but no major ones. It's all been things that were misunderstood, whether it be the contract, and we've cleaned that up over the years. And we really haven't had any issues because anything we're very transparent up front, or I'm up front with mostly everybody. And if there's a change order, I have a client signed it. First we stop the work, we talk about it, and then we basically, I'll draw an updated proposal and I'll add it. And usually we're all on the same page. But, years ago, when you kind of fly by the seat of your pants, maybe 15 years ago, and you don't have all that language in there, there's a lot that could go wrong. There's a real lot that could go wrong, as you know. But now I don't have anything major. I'm real lucky about that. But, I would say, to avoid those major issues, get your contract up to date.
Can I ask you, what's the biggest thing you've added to your contract over the years, or something that's come up on potentially with a client or on the job site that made you add it to the contract, or something that you've heard online from somebody that you wanted to add to the contract?
Yeah, change orders are always one of the big things. You always try to avoid being upfront and honest with people from the get-go, but there's just sometimes you don't know what things that you're going to run with, whether they're unforeseen. So I'll try to go through that with the client ahead of time before we start it, and saying, hey, look, we're going, I don't know what's going to be down there when we dig down. We might have to, let me give an example, waterproof the foundation wall. but be prepared. There might be a cost, and the cost might be between this and this. So I always give them a heads up ahead of time. So it's not like I get out there, oh, surprise, now you have to spend more money, because I don't like making people feel uncomfortable. And I want them to feel very comfortable when they're walking into this process. So I think that's the key to avoid it. And with our drainage business, there's been a lot of things that could arise, because hardscape and landscaping are really straightforward, right? You do the work, you're done. With water management, there's a lot of things that you have to look at with unforeseen rain events, hurricanes. A lot of that stuff was added over time. So yeah, it's get your attorney involved.
Yes.
Hey, I'm Shane Herbert. I'm the owner of Royal Stone and Masonry, and I am a hardscaper. How much time do we have? I got so many horror stories in business. I'm basically 5 years, I guess. Coming up to 5 years next year, I think is pretty much my. In fact, no, it'll be 5 years this summer. That's my full 5 years. Like end of August is my full 5 years. So, but horror stories, I would suggest. We was building the Sunrise project. So the Sunrise project, I've been planning this project out with this customer. We did a higher tier level patio, and then the steps coming down, we created a sunrise as you go into the swimming pool. And the reason for this project is because they're overlooking this beautiful horizon where the sun actually rises. So it was a really, really nice project. So I had all the aerial plans. I had everything, the neighboring fence, how I was going to build this project. And I planned it out so much. Anyway, it came to starting the project, and the first thing what had to be done, we had to build a retaining wall along the neighbor's fence. So I got the machines going by, and we got the Bobcat there. We're taking out the dirt, we're leveling out all the grade there. And then all of a sudden, I heard the neighbor say, "Oi, stop, what are you doing? Stop what you're doing." So I popped my head over the fence, and I'm like, Jesus, it's almost a 10-foot drop into the neighbor's property. I didn't even know. I looked over the other neighbor's property, and they're almost level with the property where I'm working. But on the far corner, I didn't even know. It's like, you're breaking my wall. Stop what you're doing. So we all stopped what we're doing. And I went round to the neighbor, and I looked at this wall. He had this 8-foot, 8-inch cinder block wall, what must have been there since the Egyptians, because there was vines running through it. It was mold, and he's like, "This wall is breaking because of you. It's breaking because of you. Your machines have destroyed my wall." And I'm like, "Listen, buddy, this wall's been up 60 years. Does it help that we're working behind it? No, but you can't blame me for this wall falling down right now." And anyway, it turned into a big fiasco. The neighbors were complaining. They're going to get the town involved, etc. I was going to lose money on this job, regardless of what was going to happen. So I brokered the deal with the guy. I said, "You know what? Just pay me for the cement wall, pay me for the blocks, the materials. I'll build everything brand new for you free." So we took the fence down. We took his old wall down. We rebuilt it. I lost 4 days on the project, but that was a problem we overcome. And the thing is, that's part and parcel of the business. When you run into a problem, don't wait for it to fix itself, especially in the hardscape industry, because you'll lose money straight away. And that's what I've learned. Every time we've ran into a problem, we fix it right there on the spot. And that's what made me improve every single time we run into these problems. We fix it right there and then. We work out a solution, and then we move forward.
What's going on, guys? My name is James Reed. I'm here from affordablepatio.com, which is our installation business, Patio SEO, which is our marketing company. And the best part is, guys, I'm a hardscaper. So not one, having an ego. No one has it figured out, right? Like, I'm this big successful guy that does millions and millions and millions in revenue and have all these separate businesses. My business is run without me. I get to go and do vacation if I want. I love my business, so like I'm always working because that's what I love to do. So the biggest things that I could recommend, it's not really like a horror stories because you're going to all go through it. Systems and processes. Don't think you have an ego that you're the guy that's figured it out, or you're the guy that could figure it out without anyone helping, because then there wouldn't be college. There wouldn't be, the world wouldn't be what it is today. Ask for help, be vulnerable. And the biggest thing is with growth, you're going to make X. So let's just say 100 grand. Then you're going to try to scale. It drops down. You're going to make 70. And that's where you say, and you've heard this 100 times, bigger isn't better. Guess what? Bigger is better. You're just under that growth thing. Then you'll come back up. You'll pass your 100. You'll be at 200 and then 300. But the worst part is you're going to drop down again and start to make 200. And you're going to say, this sucks. But you've got to keep pushing through. When you go to the gym, guess what? You get sore. It's so weird. This is what I was telling you about earlier about stating the obvious. You do this every day at the gym. But when it comes to your business, you're like, no, I don't want that pain. I don't want that. You got to push through to get stronger. Now we have transmissions that blow, and I smile, and everyone's like, yo, like, I can't believe you're so calm and collective. I'm like, I remember when I couldn't fix that transmission. So now when it blows and it's $6,000 or $7,000, whatever it is, I have a little smirk because it's like, wow, this feels good that we pay for this stuff and it's all in-house. So push through and also figure out what you want. When you don't know what you want, you get very lost in the sauce. So what we talked about earlier about you, and it's a great experience share, figure out that what makes you happy, perfect that, and then the money will always follow.
I'm Kevin Scott. I'm the owner of Muskoka Landscapers, and I like to build cool shit, and I am a hardscaper. Yeah, I mean, I probably have a few from long ago. I mean, there's probably some recent ones as well, but maybe not so much financially, but a good financial one is I used to have a customer who was a repeat customer for a very long time. And the work we were doing for them was fantastic work. And we pretty much had free reign as far as creativity and, but they were notoriously awful at paying, like 6 months, 8 months. And the projects continued to increase in value. And it just got to the point where we couldn't operate like that anymore. Like, we've got all these other people who are great payers, and we're basically funding this one-off who was a great customer. But eventually, and I mean, that's, 7-8 years ago now, but the romance of having great projects and great work and somebody who is, I love it, carry on, but doesn't pay is not very romantic.
Makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah. And it's tough because you get wrapped up in it.
Right.
You see the $1 million job and go, oh, this, especially when you're new, you get too excited about what you think you're going to make or the opportunity to make it. And again, if you don't get paid or you had to carry it for 5 months or you've been in your line of credit for months and months and months because you haven't been paid. And not only that, you can't run your business properly. Yeah. Right? Like when you have good cash flow, it's easy to make decisions. Yeah. You need to buy something, you buy it. You want to invest in something, you do. You need to hire somebody else, get another truck, whatever it is. When cash flow is good, it's way easier to make decisions.
Hi, everyone. My name's Dan Hughes. I'm the president of Segmental Systems. I'm a hardscape contractor out of Spokane, Washington, and I am a hardscaper. We could go for hours on horror stories. Most of my horror stories I think involve just particular customers that I don't see eye to eye with, I guess. It takes a long time to trust your gut to figure out whether you're a good fit with the customer or not. And I did some, I don't know, I can go on for horror stories forever, but I got had customers that you just, you can't wait to be done with them. I've had customers that never became customers that, are calling me at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, and they want to change this, they want to change that. And we haven't even stepped foot on the job site to start working yet. And, I had a lady that I was losing sleep over. And I just said, you know what? I haven't broke ground on her job. I haven't even have a contract signed with her yet. We're still in the design process. And the only word she knew in English very well was too expensive. She could speak that fluently, but everything else she had a problem with, right? And I was losing sleep, and I was like, you know what, it's got to be done. It's like I cut ties with her. I'm like, you gotta find somebody else, but and there's been a lot of commercial jobs where I've had some. I could give you some horror stories on. My second year in business, I had my supplier, because he wanted to sell this job, really pushed for me to go after this job. And it was a 84,000 square foot paver job, 5 hours from my house. And so that was, and it was a federal prevailing wage job, or Davis-Bacon job. So now the wages are, basically double what my guys were normally making at the time. And so he pushed hard to get me into that, to get me to bid that job. And looking back, I'm like, I really didn't have any business bidding that job. I got the job, and we made money on the job, but not nearly enough to make it worthwhile. But, just, I don't know. There's you could have horror stories forever. I'm sorry, but it's like, they could go on for days.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Go back and find their episodes that you just listened to. If something hit a nerve or a chord that you want to learn more about this person and their business, or background on their business, by just going back into our database. We have over 200 episodes now here on the How to Hardscape podcast, but you can find throughout the year here the full episode for each of these hardscapers that you just listened to there. And we're going to continue with mashup episodes for a few more weeks here. Ratings, reviews, would love them. Apple Podcasts rating and a written review would be amazing. And I thank you to everybody that's already done that. Spotify, just a quick 5-star rating there would be amazing as well. And thank you to our sponsor, Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off their services there. And the How to Hardscape headquarters. If you're looking to streamline processes in your business with a software, How to Hardscape's headquarters may be for you. Reach out to me at How to Hardscape on Instagram, or contact at howtohardscape.com and shoot me an email there. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.